Hello everyone and welcome back. As always, if you could like and subscribe and comment if you want, that's lovely. But it's Sarah here, just doing her thing with watercolour. So today it's January, and so I'm trying to get back into the swing of painting. And on one of our local Facebook pages, there was this beautiful picture of our local Skippool Creek, and I thought, oh, that looks good, let's give that a go. So that's what we're going to give it a go today. So this is going to be a bit of a simplified version of this, but let's see what happens. So as always, I've got my trusty spray bottle, plenty of water, a paper towel, my Winsor & Newton tray of watercolours that I've done the first squirt on, and I'm about to do another squirt to wake them up. I've got 3 brushes out, so I've got a large squirrel mop brush, which is probably one of my favourite brushes, a Winsor & Newton number 4 synthetic sable brush, round brush, and a little rigger brush. This is a 0 for some of those sort of trees and bushes and things. I've also got a tiny little bit of candle wax because I want to protect some of the white of the paper, and a trusty little plastic card. What else have I got on me? I've got some bleed proof white, which might be quite useful. A little bit of Naples yellow, which is a lovely translucent yellow, and a little bit of lavender, another translucent colour for today. As you can probably hear, I've got a bit of a chest infection. Hubby's had a bit of a chest infection as well, but painting's helping me keep going. So I'm just waking up my paints, and whilst I'm doing that, I'm just having a look at this lovely photograph. I'm thinking about where I might put this wax. So I'm going to run some wax down this mast, and a little bit of a reflection of the one in by the side of it, because I like that. I'm going to run some wax up the side of this, because the light's coming this way. I'm going to just draw an arrow on my paper to remind me that the light's coming this way. I'm going to put a little bit along there, a little bit along that mast, a bit across this white part of the top of the boat, and a bit on these in the background, because it'll make life a lot easier in the end. You could use masking fluid and then take the masking fluid off, but once I want to get painting, and I get frustrated. So there's also some lovely light here that I want to trap on the edge. So I'm just going to run a little bit along there, and I think with that I'm about ready to get going. Unfortunately, I'm under fluorescent lights or inside lights at the moment because the light in the UK is quite poor. So getting a light source that helps see the actual colour is really difficult on the videos, so I apologise in advance. But let's get going. We'll start by mixing up a nice sort of blue grey colour. So plenty of water on my brush. I need quite a bit of it because I'm going to use it for both the sky and the water. So I'm putting some fresh water into my well, and I'm just dropping in some cerulean blue. Really, really light, lots of water in there. It can move around a lot. Yeah. And I'm going to just wet my paper. All the way down to the bottom. And I'm going to run. I remember watercolour always, we always work light to dark in watercolour. And particularly when you're working wet in wet like this will dry at least 30% lighter. And whilst you've got this little bead of water on the bottom, you'll be fine. So while I'm here, I'm going to also drop in this water around the boats and under the platform area. I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. I'm going to put another bit more water into there. Just drop that water in at the moment. So it's exactly the same colour as the sky. Lots and lots of water. Just letting it do its thing, and you should see where you've put that little wax resist on. You should see those coming through, which is really quite nice. So these are your lights, always the lightest value first. Plenty of water on because we want to be able to work into that space. You can always go darker, but going lighter is much more difficult in watercolour. That's drying out a little bit at the top, so I'm just going to give it a bit of a squirt to keep the water content up. So I'm going to go for the same cerulean blue, a little bit of ultramarine blue, which will make a cobalt blue because that's what cobalt blue is, and then a touch of burnt sienna in there to make a really sort of browny bluey grey colour. Still quite watery. And I'm going to look at the shape of those clouds. Sorry, you're getting a reflection of the light on there, but I'm looking at the shape of the clouds and I'm working quite quickly to put, remember these will go softer because they're going wet in wet. And I've taken my paper down to the board And I'm going to use the same colours, dropping them into the water to build the reflections up. Hair on there. Wash it off my brush. So it's like an underpainting. We're just wanting to get a sense of sky and the water being connected. You do need to work quite quickly. It's quite difficult, particularly if it's warm, because as it starts to dry, you end up in a more difficult situation. So I'm going to use a bit of ultramarine now, a thicker paint consistency we're aiming for. And burnt sienna, so we've got a dark grey. So ultramarine, burnt sienna, and I'm putting, because these clouds need to go in and go soft. Just adding a touch of Payne's Grey in to make them even darker. Payne's Grey's got like a bluey tinge with it, which is really quite nice. And I'm going to add darks along this, particularly along this bank, because I want the bank to be quite bright. And I want the sky to reflect. So I'm just turning my board around to just control that sky movement a little bit. My board down in a minute once I've got this. I want some darker foreground just to make it feel connected, and I'm going to put some cerulean blue into that mix, the same mix, normal water, and a bit of ultramarine, bit of burnt sienna to darken it. And I'm just going to load up some of those clouds. You can already see that they're starting to granulate beautifully, but I just want to have a little bit more of changeable colour and temperature in there. So I'm just going to do the moving around. So this is just the base wash. It doesn't need to really look very much, but I do like it when I can leave the clouds to do their own thing. And doing this sort of darker, stormier clouds reflected into the space is quite a nice way of doing it. I just don't want that puddle. I'm just going to run some fresh, clean water there to keep the light. I didn't want that dark settling there. And I think I will just give that a pause whilst that dries. If I've that for a little while. Okay, so we're back. This is dry. I did finish it off with the hairdryer, but hopefully you can see that beautiful granulation, and these colours work really, really well together to get that really nice granulated effect in the sky and then obviously in the water. And this darker section is really, really nice, because when you look at the picture, it's got this darker section here as well as in the sky, darker bits. So we're doing all right there, which is all good. There we go, we're back in focus. It had lost its focus. One little tip is when you're waiting to see whether your paper's dry, use the back of your hand, not the front. And it's dry when the lumps have gone back. It's settled back into what it should be. And always, if you're using a heat tool or a hairdryer, use a medium heat, don't use a high heat because it changes the pigments. Okay, so now I'm going to put in this background. So I want that sort of twigginess and the bushes, and then this really bright foreground, and there's a really nice sort of orangey browny colour that'll be like a burnt sienna stripe across there for me. So let's have a look. So I'm going to just clean water and wet this area that I'm going to do the bushes and the trees into. Well, nearly clean water. And I want to make sure I trap a little bit of light on the edge of that water. There. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of a bluey browny colour. So sticking with the ultramarine, I'll just put that on top of the wash that we had, and then I'm going to use some raw sienna or some yellow ochre into there. Another nice colour to get quite a sort of deep greeny colour, because it's winter, so we need the depth of colour. There we go, like a greeny grey colour. So working wet in wet, and I'm just going to remember, when you're working off a photograph, it's an impression of something. It's not, you don't have to paint the photograph. I'm working on a slope. Just lifted it up a little bit. I find working on a slope easier, sort of controlling. So this is like the base wash. So I'm going to now drop in some neutral tint into that. To make a thicker brown colour. I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine just to neutralise it a little bit. So here we are, we've got neutral tint and ultramarine. It's like a really dark brown colour, but I want the dark to trap against this boat here. Okay, so, and that will help show the whiteness of these boats off, because when you've got a very, very bright white, then you need a very, very, very dark next to it. So I've just got my rigger brush and I'm just going to pull up some of the tree trunks into that. I'm taking the water out of my brush and I'm just going to use a little bit of a thirsty brush to soak up some of this extra pigment off the bottom, because I don't want it pooling too much, particularly on the sides, because I want it to drift away. And then I'm going to grab my little trusty card, put in some background tree trunks. Remember, this is permanent, so you might want to practice on a little bit of paper first. But a nice way of just getting a feel of sort of twiggy trees, not triggy tweeds, triggy in that background. And again, it's granulating beautifully because they're those sorts of colours, and I'll let that dry naturally. I'm just going to pull that extra water down into there, just so that it's got a sense of okay, so that's looking good. So onwards into this other piece of land. I'll just move this over a little bit. So looking at the picture, we've got quite bright landmass and a bit of orange here going across that I want to try and capture. So I've just altered the angle so we can get this on. So wetting this area. I think my brush wasn't very clean there, do you guys? Oops. Let's just dab that off and start again. Wetting this area with a sort of clean brush. Okay, so again, we always work light to dark. And for this one, I'm going to just drop a little bit of Naples yellow out of a tube. It's a really beautiful translucent yellow. It's Naples yellow. This one's a student grade Daler Rowney. I got it from the works. And we're just going to drop the edge of that beautiful. And then I might just drop in a tiny bit of quinacridone gold. If you haven't got it, it's fine, you can just use yellow ochre. And this is my quinacridone gold. I'm just, no more water on my brush, I'm just going to nice little underpainting. If you need to drop down a brush size to do that, that's fine. I'm just going to take up a thirsty brush, take the water off, and just like that. I'm also now going to just drop in, just straight from the palette, a little bit of burnt sienna, just for a bit of that gorgeous texture. And let it mix on the palette. That'll be nice. So I'm just letting that dry off a little bit because it's a little bit too damp at the moment. And then I'm going to scratch in. Actually, I'm going to drop in some of my bleed proof white. So here we are on bleed proof white. So straight out the pot on the brush. And I'm just going to drop in just to get that edge texture of the grasses. That's just with my little rigger brush. And because it's opaque, so it doesn't let the light through, creates, and it doesn't bleed in as easily, creates that sort of frosty edge. We will be coming back to our bleed proof in a little while, but not yet. So I'm just going to lift that up. You can see it a little better. I'm just going to tilt and let the paint just do its stuff. And it's time to just let it dry. This is drying beautifully. I'll just get my little plastic card. And pop in some grass marks, different directions, just dragging it through. That's nice. And we'll let it dry again. Time for a rest. Okay, so That's fairly dry. Stick my tape back down. It is a bit of a cheaper paper is this, it's my practice paper. It's not that paper, it's a Creative Peak watercolour pad, and I get this off Amazon. It's not the best, but it's actually quite a good paper to work with. So back to our photograph. So I'm going to put this staging in. I'm ignoring the staging in the back. I might put a few more trees on the background, but I don't want to overdo that because otherwise we end up bringing the background forward. So I want to put some of this staging in next, which is here. I'm sorry, that's my hubby in the background, he's still not very well. So I'm going to use this Naples yellow as a bit of a base because it's on my palette. And I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna into there for warmth. Nice warm colour. And then I'm going to use some cobalt blue or some cerulean blue just to cool it down a little bit. And that's not a bad starting point, because I don't want it too dark to start with, because it's not too dark. So I'm just going to go in. So I'm using my little number 4 brush for this. So this is wet on dry, just put in the base colour in. You can see that nice little bit of wax resist as well. So whilst that's still damp, I want to darken this down, so I'm going to add a bit more ultramarine into it. And so I'm going to put darker washes on the planks. If you can do this whilst it's still wet, you can get some sort of nice gradients across, leaving little highlights in between. And then I'm just going to run a shadow colour along those edges, and then up. Because the light's coming this way, so I'm going to run a shadow colour up the outside of those and along the base of these. That's just that dark brown with the extra blue in. And then I'm just going to darken this off. Underneath. And I don't want it to be too fussy, because I do want it, I want this boat to be the focal point, but I do want it to be there. So I'm just thinking about this boat, so a little bit of teal. I'm just adding a little bit of this Naples yellow, because I just want it a little bit greener to make like a duck egg green. So you can see that It's a duck egg green. Just, that's enough. And I'm just going to add a tiny bit of ultramarine into there to just put a little bit of shadow. It's something and nothing. I'm just putting a little shadow around it. So whilst this is drying, I'm just going to run a little bit of this brown along this edge as if there's like some staging. And platforms going on behind. Okay. This is lighter than it looks in the actual video. So I'm just going to run a darker, so ultramarine into the mix to make it darker, or a little bit of Payne's grey if you haven't got a lot of ultramarine. But ultramarine's a really good shadow colour, so I want to just make that edge a bit darker. And because it's underneath the staging, I'm just going to wash it away. So plenty of clean water and just rub it into the wash to just get a bit of depth under there. I'm going to do the same down here. So put your colour on. And colour into the space. Wash your brush, plenty of water. And it sort of lets it melt away a little bit into the wash. So, time to come to this red boat, I think. So it's here. It's quite a dominant red colour, but I don't want it too bright red. So I want to just mute that red down a little bit. And the opposite of to red, to mute it, is green. So I'm going to put a little bit of green on the into the paint just to mute it off. So I stick in with my number 4 brush, bit of cadmium red onto the palette. And then I'm just going to drop a little bit of green into there just to mute it a little bit and just take the edge off. So I don't want it to look overly bright. And I'm just going to paint the boot. A bit of white at the front. Now, I'm also going to paint the reflection. I don't want it too perfect, but I do want it to look like it's the boat still. So I'm just going to let that dry, and then we're just going to drop a little bit more of a bit more of a muted blue, so adding a bit more ultramarine into it and it will make it a little bit purpley. And I just want to put a bit of a darker edge. Okay, so I have to stop fiddling at this point because otherwise I end up making a mess. I'm just going to stop and let it dry. Okay, so whilst this is drying off, I can work over here because this is dry. And I want to put some of these grassy textures on. I don't want to lose the light, but I do want to put this sort of greeny band in over and to get that idea of the grasses. So let's give that a go. Okay, folks. So I want to. I've changed my water. I've got some fresh water. I'm going to just put a little bit of hooker's green into this Naples yellow. Far too bright, so I'm going to use some ultramarine to dull it down a bit. Or even some phthalo blue, because that's quite a turquoisey blue. That's quite nice. So as you can see, it's quite a thick mixture. And I'm just going to put it in. So I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna into it now. So it's still quite a thick, sticky mixture. I just want that idea of greeny browny colour on the floor, on the wet my brush. Take a little bit of the excess water off and then I'm just going to soften the base of that in. So it sort of blends into the wash. So it loses a little bit of definition as it's going into the background. And I'm just rubbing it away. Wash my brush. You've got a colour change there, which is quite nice. Remember that they will always end up a lighter colour. So I mix it in some Naples yellow, quite a lot of Naples yellow into that mix now to get a much sort of more translucent greeny colour, leaving some of that base colour showing through. Straight away you've got a little bit of that highlight of that some few darker tones. So we've got a bit of a scrubby moorland going on. And you can play with that as long as you want. So it's coming nearer the foreground, so I want it warmer. So put some burnt sienna and this Naples yellow together. A little bit of that, touch of that green. And I want a little bit more definition on those grasses. Off the brush, plenty of water on. I'm just going to soften the base of those away. So I'm building up the layers. I'm now working damp. A bit more. Oops, I think I've got a bit too much green there. Mix it in. Lots of different directions, don't just go in the same direction, leaving those gaps. So we're going to come in with a bit of white. I'm just putting a little bit into the water. I'll come in with some fresh clean water and just rub that away a little bit for the reflections on the bank. As long as your base is fairly dry, you'll be alright, you're fine. And try and sort of mix up different mixes of greens and yellows. Just get a bit of different textures going on your brush. And different colours. I'm just going to blend this out a little bit. I just want to add a little bit more. So I've got a little bit of reflection into the water on the edge of that bank. And just adding a little bit of burnt sienna and ultramarine together to get that really nice dark colour. I'm just going to add some definition into this bank. Plenty of water, take the excess off and then just smooth it away. You can sit and do that for as long as you want, really. just gives a little bit more definition to the riverbank. So oops, so here we are, we've done most of this, done the red bit of this, so it's time to put a little bit onto the water, I think. I don't want to put too much on the water because I do like the reflection, but there is a reflection of this pontoon that's darker than the actual pontoon itself, so I do need to put that in the water. So we started with the burnt sienna and oops, a bit of neutral tint, and then added a little bit of ultramarine until you're happy with that. So it goes across like this. And the reflection, oops, goes down like this. And I'm going to add a little bit more ultramarine into that mix just to give it a bit of a different colour as the shadow on the water. I just washed my brush out and I'm just with a clean wet brush just going through that clean damp brush just so that it has a few ripples on it. I'm dropping some water in just to change the texture, so I don't want it to look too solid because it's not, it's a reflection. Plenty of water, take the excess off your brush and just push and you get a ripple. Wash your brush every time though, otherwise you just end up moving paint. That looks more like a reflection now. I'm just going to darken this side of that post using that dark brown, and I'm just going to darken that post as well because it seems to have got a little bit lost. So that hopefully makes it more of a reflection. I'm just going to do the same across here. It's really important that we keep these horizontal as much as possible. Okay. So I'm just getting my little card and I'm just going to see if I can scratch out. No, it's too dry. So, time for some Dr. Martens white. And my little rigger brush, make sure it's clean. I quite often get a lump and then just pop it in the top of the so just emphasising the top of that. And I'm going to paint the mast in white because the white on the painting. And if you miss a bit, it's not the end of the world. And if it's not perfectly straight, it's not the end of the world. So actually, they look better if they're not perfectly straight. And if you've missed a bit like that, it doesn't matter. So I'm just putting in these masts. I'm just putting a little bit of white against some of these as if they are little boats that you really can't quite see in the distance. If I was more skilled, you'd probably be able to keep them, but I'm not, so. So just that idea that there might be some other boats along the way. Right, so I need to drop in this mast. Nice and wriggly. And the same with this one that's along this lovely I'm just going to put a little bit of a light against there because I'd sort of lost it with the dark. Okay. And a little bit of light on this edge. I've left that, which is quite nice. I try not to make too many, they need to be painty. This is why I don't have clean fingers. Right, okay, so we're over to these lovely white grasses on the edge of this side of the creek. So I'm going to just zoom in a little bit so we can see. So this is like the underpainting, and I'm just going to put some beautiful white grasses using this so more information at the front, more detail at the front, less detail as you go up because they're going away, and a little bit of a reflection in the water. I don't think they're far off finished really. Oh, I haven't put this mast in. Oh, I know what I haven't done. I haven't put those reflected trees in yet. Well, that's what I'm missing. So I'm just going to use a bit of this colour, maybe a little bit more ultramarine in it. And I'm just going to run. I knew there was something missing. Some reflections into here as well. Rigger brush is quite good for reflections because it stops you getting too caught up with the shape of things. There we go, that's better. I knew there was something missing. Now we have, might just drop a little bit of light blue into the edge of here. To show that it's got something on the top and along that edge of the shadow. But I think that's my painting today of Skippool Creek, and I hope you enjoyed it. So I've just been over an hour in total painting time. Let me zoom back out. And then the board. Oops, there we go. So there we are, Skippool Creek. As always, it's never about copying copying something. It's about doing your own interpretation of it, and that interpretation is what matters. I'm just putting a little bit of fairy light movement across. But I just hope you've enjoyed it, and I think you'll join me again. As I've said before, do a like and subscribe. and that way we can boost each other along the way. Making videos as a chronically ill person can be quite a challenge. So having a little bit of a well done occasionally helps everybody. So like and subscribe, folks, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.